An exhausted British negotiating team will land back in Blighty tonight, having secured our future as a prosperous, independent nation after more than 40 years under the umbrella of the European Union. A triumphant Boris Johnson was snapped, celebrating emphatically in number 10 after one final phone call with Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen just before 2 p.m. on Christmas Eve. But it was the PM's team of officials, led by Lord Frost, who had worked tirelessly, fueled by takeaway pizzas, sandwiches and mince pies, for over 2 weeks in Brussels. The final stretch of the negotiations, which began in March as the COVID pandemic ripped across the continent, saw both sides hammering out a final compromise over the future fishing rights. Having entered their end phase shortly after 2 p.m. on December 23, the wrangling was held up by a gaffe on the EU side. Bureaucrats had used the wrong figures to calculate what fish EU boats would be able to land from British waters after the bloc handed back 25% of its catch. The entire future relationship pact, worth some £660 billion, hinged on a fraction of that in the value of fish. "I will never eat fish again," one frustrated official groaned as it dawned the wrangling could even see the talks not brought to a close before Christmas Day. But even before the last-minute crisis talks, as officials attempted to translate Mr. Johnson and Mrs. von der Leyen's political compromise into reality, the process had never quite looked like it was ready to produce a deal. Just 20 days earlier, Lord Frost and EU counterpart Michel Barnier had pressed pause on the talks to admit they needed a political shove if they were ever to succeed. The pair couldn't quite see a way forward on the so-called level playing field that will ensure fair competition between the EU and UK as part of the tariff and quota-free trade agreement. Hardline EU states, such as France, were pushing for the mechanism to develop over time, locking Britain to future evolutionary changes in Brussels regulations. For Britain, this simply wasn't acceptable given the Prime Minister's pledge to reclaim control of Britain's laws, borders and coastal waters. Rows over fisheries agreements compiled further misery on negotiators as they attempted to work through the deadlock. Last week, Mr. Barnier tabled a final offer to Lord Frost, handing back 25% by value of the EU's catch in UK waters, phased in over 7 years. Britain's counter-offer was deemed totally unacceptable to Brussels' chief haggler, with the bloc asked to give back 35% with a 3-year transition period.